Wow.
Okay, thank you, Daisy. This is Mark DiCarlo. This is Voices of the Coastal Bend with a perennial guest, John Kelley. 22 years in the making. We've changed up formats, of course, to try to get on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, etc. Thank you for watching. I think John, our perennial, again, guest, has filed some complaints locally about city elections. About what, John?
Texas Ethics Commission. I filed 2 complaints yesterday. They should arrive and be documented as entered into the record today before 3. I filed 1 complaint against Roland Barrera and 1 against Susie Luna Saldana. The first one, people may be aware of. That election has been in the there's nothing worse than an old researcher with too much time on his hands. I
may qualify as one of those too.
Yeah, I started looking into this when.
Go ahead. I might adjust the camera.
And I saw that I usually look at the campaign reports and the personal financial records of the candidates, because that's always interesting.
Did you check me out when I should?
Yes, I did. Yes,
when I ran for mayor, you did check me out?
Sure.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Kind of scary too. Go ahead.
Yeah. And anyway, the campaign reports are on the city secretary's website, and then the personal financial statements, you have to actually go down and sign to see them. So I went down there to see them, and there was one was missing. Obviously missing was Roland Barrera, who is running for District 3. He is failed to file a personal financial statement.
Okay, so Roland Barrera, who's running for District 3 in an upcoming election.
In the runoff, yes.
In the runoff in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Right.
And when is that runoff?
It's the 18th of December.
The 18th of December, and this show is hopefully we run a couple times.
Yeah.
The 18th of December.
Early voting starts this weekend.
And where's District 2 of the city?
District 2 is basically the inner city, the old city. It runs from downtown almost to Airline and then over to SBID.
Are you in District 2? Are we sitting in District 2 in my office on 722 Elizabeth Street?
I can't tell you because it jogs around here.
Okay.
I'm like a block out of it. I'm in District 4.
But I know RJ Torres is running here.
Yes.
So that would be his district?
Yes.
Okay, so we're in that district now.
Right.
Christus Spawn Hospital area.
Yes. Anyway, Roland Butch Escobedo filed a letter with the city attorney saying that Roland shouldn't be on the ballot for the special election if he hadn't complied with all the requirements, which the personal financial statement is a requirement. And so then the other candidate, Eric Cantu, went to court to ask the judge against the city to ask the judge to remove his opponent's name, Roland's name, because he hadn't met the requirements for office, for running. The judge ruled that the city charter did not have what to do or any penalty for violating the requirement, even though it had it on record it was required. So he said the other venue the judge basically said it was the wrong venue. He said it should go in front of Texas.
We're getting kind of technical for a lot of the viewers. And even though this is we get into details more than most shows can because of the time. But so I'm sorry I interrupted you, but try to be.
So he said that the appropriate venue was the Texas Ethics Commission and under the campaign laws. So I looked at that, and I looked at it again, and I really kind of looked at a lot of the candidates' filings, and I was getting kind of upset because they're so sloppy. So Roland did file a personal financial statement in November 14th, I think it was. It was considerably after the date. So I went down and looked at that one. Guess what? It was totally incomplete. And it's obvious that, in my opinion, that he is being unresponsive. He said in court that he was confused. He didn't understand he was supposed to file this form. Well, he filed one when he ran in 2009. He filed one when he ran in 2011. And I asked the city secretary, and she said he got a hard copy packet that had the document and the instructions on filing it in his candidate packet.
Excuse me for 1 second. Now, because I've run for office before, unfortunately, unsuccessfully, I'm aware. I've looked at these documents before, and they're often incomplete. Isn't that correct?
Yes, they are.
He's not a great exception to the rule,
no,
is he?
And that's why I decided to start filing it. I'm really kind of tired of people taking the opinion that nobody will bother to look at them or to file a complaint if they're wrong. Because like I said, I'm an old researcher with lots of time on my hands, so this is kind of hobby for me, and I get
it's a civic duty.
Yes, it is.
It's civic responsibility, and thank you very much for doing it. Whether right or wrong, whatever happens on these complaints, I'm looking at one of the complaints that you filed against Mr. Roland Barrera, and it looks like the statement of fact states, as you were saying, failure to file a timely financial disclosure.
Yes.
Failure to report an account of financial activity, including.
Right.
This is very interesting. Occupational income retainer, $60,000 of income per year from the Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority.
And he didn't declare that.
And that would seem to be very important because of the fact that City Council, Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority, that's a city tax, not a county tax, correct?
And they appoint the individuals on the board.
On the board of the Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority, who run it. Number B, failed to report an account of financial activity, including identification of a loan from financial institution in excess of $1,000, home mortgage transfer from Claber Bank to U.S. Bank on condo, et cetera, on Lakeshore Drive. Now, that wouldn't seem to be as important regarding a conflict, though.
But the fact is, he didn't report a liability that he had created just 10 days before he filed, or 20 days before he filed.
And going on regarding the complaint by John Kelley against Mr. Rolando Barrera, nicknamed Roland Barrera, you have identifications of assets in the business listed 0 on PFS Nueces County tax record show value of $5,655. That doesn't seem like
that's a minor one.
That's a minor one.
But it's, again, a failure to list assets that he has.
Okay. And D, you have, again, against this complaint against Mr. Roland Barrera, a list of all boards of directors and executive positions. Mr. Barrera listed on campaign donor hanger, 2 board positions, YMCA of the Coastal Bend and National Association of Health Underwriters Political Action Committee.
He actually lists about 8 boards that he's on. On his flyer, but I think only 2 of them are current. One is YMCA, which is not a big deal. The other one is actually a lobbying organization for the insurance industry, and I certainly think that would be a conflict of interest.
The National Association, the complaint that you filed against him being in an executive position, Mr. Roland Barrera, that with the National Association of Health Underwriters Political Action Committee, you saying that's a lobbying position.
Yeah. Basically, that group is a lobbying group. They raise money to influence policy. So, the 2 big ones on here are the first one, the RTA, and I'm sure
the fact that he has a retainer of some amount of money. What does he do for the RTA? What does Mr. Barrera do for getting $60,000 of income per year? That's basically the wage for a 40-hour-a-week job.
It is. Supposedly, he provides consulting for them on insurance matters.
Consulting on insurance matters.
Yes, he used to be on the board, which I find.
I would like to know, when the Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority, as an aside, and we'll come back to your complaint in a second, is this payola? Is he, which,
Yeah.
I mean, is he doing a job? How many hours a week? Is it 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours? Consultation is often a little bit questionable.
Yeah. I think the payment itself is questionable, but what's really the point here is he didn't report it. Now, that's important because a personal financial statement is used as somebody is elected to determine if they have a conflict of interest. So if somebody said, well, maybe he's got a conflict of interest, well, they go and look at his personal financial statement. It says well, he doesn't have one, but yet he does. He is secret. He's held that back and not let people know it. Same with the insurance, being involved in an insurance lobbying group.
And those of us that have been involved in politics for some years have been very suspect of the tremendous amount of money that the Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority seems to receive from sales taxes. And it would seem we question their various projects, including their building this new office building next to City Hall, which competes with private enterprise.
Yes.
We're also very concerned about, obviously, the 6 Points station that they abandoned under the guise that there was a fire.
Right.
Very questionable. So we're we're very concerned about that conflict.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions around the RTA and the management by the board of the RTA. It's a certain group of people who seem more interested in contracts than serving the people.
All right. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something else?
No, that's all. I think the issue is here. He tried to avoid filing one. He thought nobody would notice. That's obvious. Mm-hmm. He then said he didn't know how to do it, which he obviously had done it before perfectly well. Then he did file one that was incomplete. And you don't forget $60,000 a year side income. You don't forget a loan you just took out 30 days ago. You don't forget that you're on these boards and commissions when it's all of your campaign material. So there's an obvious, it certainly appears that there's an obvious attempt to deceive.
And there's no doubt that he has $60,000. Mr. Roland Barrera has a $60,000 of income per year from the Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority. There's no doubt on that.
We attach the contract. I think it's attached there. The contract, the board minutes. It might not be on that one, but the board minutes and the contract is. I have.
Okay, here's a.
Yes. Oh, there.
I don't know if you could see it. But
April.
This is what Mr. We're broadcasting via two sources. This is Corpus Christi. This is that document that he's referring to. Mr. Kelley's referring to Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority, April 4th, 2018, signed by Jorge Cruz Aedo,
the
CEO, and consulting services. And I don't see Mr. Barrera's name. Is his name here on here somewhere?
There. This is yes.
Services to be performed.
Roland Barrera Insurance Consultant.
Okay.
The consultant.
Okay, so Roland Barrera Insurance, right? The consultant, and it's provided as follows. Now, allegedly, these services to be performed by Roland Barrera include. We'll provide. Gosh, I shouldn't laugh. We'll provide technical support and review a fully insured and self-funded plan to determine the best program for employees and the CCRTA in coverage and cost, assist CCRTA staff, etc. There's quite a few things listed, but I would say this. I don't know about this because he should be paid. To me, he should be paid per hour.
Yeah.
Even we're $200 an hour.
It's all assists and evaluate. There's no hard product there.
Yeah, and I tell you one thing as an attorney. Now I can't say from his position, but I could look at something in 5 seconds,
right?
Because I could read pretty fast, and if I got this kind of a deal,
right.
$60,000 a year, but we don't know. I mean, maybe we can't say for certain whether or not a lot of work is done by Mr. Barrera.
Why not report it?
I always go a little bit further, but you're right. Why not report it? Is it because he would be in a position as a city council person he'd be in a position of actually voting on certain things. And if he was
board
listed,
members for
he
RTA.
did he do, how long, this is since April. Do you know if he had a contract with the Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority prior to April 4th, 2018?
Yes, I believe that he had, if I remember the records, he had a contract. This ought to make the public very unhappy. He had a contract for $48,000, and he raised it to $60,000.
Do you know if he ever recused himself from anything regarding the RTA, including the appointment of the board members before?
No, I did not. See, the other thing is my understanding is he always recommends either an insurance company he has a relationship with and he used to work.
Oh, isn't that that's a big deal here in Corpus Christi.
Sure.
Construction and insurance on the city council, right?
Yes.
Construction people with hands in development,
right,
and insurance. That's a very big deal. And I think Lloyd Neal, our former county judge, had an insurance company.
Yes.
And I'll just stop it there. So, and by the way, if Mr. Roland Barrera wants to come on the show and discuss anything that we've discussed, he's more than likely to come on the show if he could be as patient as Mr. Kelley in terms of getting this show up.
See, this is right here. The financial impact. The contract modification will increase the cost of the agreement from $48,000 to $60,000 a year, and an increase of $12,000 per year for the additional services.
Okay. Now, I think, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. John Kelley. We're discussing on Facebook. God willing, it'll be placed on, if timely, on the public access channel, Channel 10, and it's also on YouTube Live. And hopefully it's audible. If anybody has any questions, whoever's watching, Ms. Lang or Mr. Cantu or Mr. Reek, we would more than likely answer any questions that they have. All right. The statement of facts, also a complaint against Mr. Roland Barrera, running for city council. Number 3, knowingly caused to be broadcast on Facebook multiple advertisements between the dates of September 28th and November 28th, 2018. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And on TV and radio. He paid Susie Saldana, Grassroots Consulting, $3,100.
It looks like it's $2,000.
$3,000 altogether
on 8/22 and an additional $1,000 on 10/19/2018. Right. That's what your complaint states.
Yes, and she regularly after that started bashing his opponents and supporting Mr. Barrera and about 6 other candidates, which I'm also going to file reports on, file complaints against. And never, ever, ever did she say this is a paid political announcement. And so she was broadcasting.
Where did she broadcast this on?
On Magic TV and radio. So that was the important thing. There is a record of these things. Anyway, she would bash the other contenders and then support a certain group of candidates, including Mr. Barrera, and she would represent this as her own opinion and not as a paid agent, which is additional offense to the election code.
Okay, well, this is one complaint before the Texas Ethics Commission that you signed against one candidate.
Right.
Have you filed any other? I believe you asserted that you'd filed another complaint against someone else.
Yes, I did file one against Susie as well, because she is a citizen. The candidate is liable for ads that are placed in her name where there's no disclosure. And but then the person who shows the advertisement but doesn't tell people that they're being paid is also guilty of misrepresentation. They're guilty of saying this is my opinion or I support when actually they're being paid to do so. So now each of the other candidates, and there are a number of other ones, Ben Molina in District 2, he also did this had this arrangement with Susie and paid her, and did not. There was no disclosure, and nor did again she misrepresented herself. There was Everett Roy in District 1 also paid Susie, and she made advertisements with no disclosure. There was Greg Perks, who ran for the 13th Court of Appeals. There was Carlos Valdez. She also promoted and didn't have any disclosure.
But we don't know for certain that the amount of do we know for certain that the amount of money that she was paid can be attributed to those ads? That's the problem, isn't it?
Let me put it this way: she was paid on a certain on a date, and then she started the show, and then after every date after that a candidate paid her, right immediately following, she started promoting them. So it's pretty obvious that there is a cause and effect relationship there, and she provides no other services that I know of.
Okay, well, you're talking about this is Mr. John Kelley, citizen activist and journalist. He filed an ethics complaint against Roland Barrera and against Susie Luna, and both of them are welcome to come on the show and respond to any allegations that Mr. Kelley has made. Now, let me ask you this. The sworn complaint is made before the Texas Ethics Commission.
Right.
What occurs then? Do they have to respond? Does the
Yes.
Ethics Commission make a decision regarding whether or not it's a merited complaint, or how does this procedure work?
They make a evaluation of the complaint and of the evidence submitted, and if they find the person guilty, then they can bring fines and sanctions against that person.
Do you know how substantial the fines or sanctions are if we file a complaint for the Texas Ethics Commission for somebody running?
I believe the highest amount is $2,000.
So they're not onerous, and it's not a criminal matter either, is it?
No. Well, there are some misdemeanor violations in the election code. The misrepresentation, for example, is I think it's a Class A misdemeanor. So those do have a criminal consequence as well. But I think the biggest consequence is letting people know that, hey, this person running around promoting all his candidates, saying it's her opinion, is getting paid by those candidates, and consequently her credibility is suspect. And we've seen this going on again and again for a number of years. And the only reason, like you said, Mark, the only reason that it doesn't stop is nobody says, hey, I'm going to file a complaint, because it's a very long, extensive process.
If I want to file a complaint, okay, so how do I file a complaint before the Texas Ethics Commission against somebody who's running for mayor? Like if I found out Mr. Joe McComb had conflicts of interest.
That's right. And Joe is one of the guys that paid her.
Okay, well, let's say that I had a complaint. I don't want to pick on Mayor McComb, but one of the persons actually watching this show had done an open records request with the city and had allegedly found a number of conflicts of Mr. McComb with the city.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And but actually, when I was running for mayor, we got the information too late, and it was like a $700 cost or something from the city. And by the time I would have paid it and got the information out when I was running against Mayor McComb, I don't think it would have been effective. So we don't know what in those documents.
Right.
If we had more of I get a kick out of, I'm always complaining about the media, which may be childish. I'm in the independent media, and I've been on public access TV. We've had some radio shows, et cetera. Now we're trying these new feeds through YouTube, Facebook, public access. But if we had a local media that would look into some of these things, it would help our community the community of Corpus Christi and Nueces County a great deal. State the obvious, right?
The media, though, really isn't set up very well for this. For example, let's talk about TV. Average story, 3 minutes. That's a long story, 3 minutes. And they have to do that every day. So the demand on reporters is not such that they have the time. This took me 2 weeks to put together. I had to go look at tax records. I had to go look at his personal financial statements. I had to dig into it took me a long time to go through the RTA minutes and find the right ones because I didn't know what the date was. All these things take a lot of time.
So how long would
A
you?
regular reporter doesn't have that time.
Some of these things, though, I've been in the courtroom before, and things were so misinformed that they have a duty to report the news accurately, and I don't know that they're always complying with that duty, which is a different issue.
Yes, it is.
How long did this sworn complaint? Let's say, could you give us a time that you filed against Mr. Rolando Barrera? How long it took you to file this complaint?
Well, once it got together, it was really no time at all, but it took me about 2 weeks to put all this stuff together. And so consequently, the time I got all the information, I did all the research on the background to research the different parts of what he had said to see if they were true or not. And I was working, I heard a couple of rumors and I had to confirm them. It's not okay to put a rumor in there. You have to track it down and find the proof.
And if they find that there is an ethics violation complaint, you don't get any money.
Oh, no.
All you've done is spend a bunch of time for nothing.
Yes.
And all right.
But it's important, Mark. It's important that we have honest people running for office and that they comply with the election laws.
Have you looked into the mayoral race? Right now we have a runoff, correct, between Mayor Joe McComb and a much younger individual.
Yes.
What is his name?
Michael Hall.
Michael Hall. Have you looked at either one of their any of their documents, and have you found any discrepancies or problems?
Yeah.
What have you found generally, or you don't have the? Go ahead.
It was interesting. Michael Hall has got some real. I think he's got some big deficits in his mayoral campaign. He graduated from college in 2014, and he immediately went out and bought for cash a $600,000 home in Ireland, and evidently he can't see any work record. He worked at a place in Austin that he said he was an investor in, but I saw no evidence anywhere that it looked that he was actually an investor or owner of the company, which was raising crickets for human food, which I don't know how much. Depends on what country, I guess, you live in to see if there's a market for that. But he started a new consulting engineering company in July, and he also supposedly works for a company he's listed on his LinkedIn account that services the petrochemical industry. He said that his position is the city's got plenty of money, which I find doubtful. I think one of our biggest problems is and it's been talked about this election cycle, is that the refineries and petrochemical industry are not paying anywhere near their fair share of taxes. How do you have $30 billion worth of investment, 7 times the amount of output and product through the port, and yet the city's going broke? Something's wrong. Somebody's not paying. And it's pretty obvious who. So when we look at the contracts from the last time they were negotiated by the city council in the port industries in the industrial tax district, they paid less because they supply their own fire and police. But they were supposed to be paying about 60 some cents per dollar of valuation, or compared to other people, and they were paying like 30 some cents. And it was redone. The contract was redone to bring them up to 62 cents on a dollar. They signed that agreement, and they immediately went to court to lower the value of the basis for the agreement. So they turned around and cut their taxes again. The city council was powerless to stop them because they established a contract based on their value, and then they went and challenged their value in court and got it reduced. And so that contract was no longer worth what it was supposed to be.
We had talked about, I think, that on one of the previous shows you were on, because again, thank you very much for coming on while we get some of our problems ironed out on our new format. And but we talked about that before, and as I said, it's my understanding throughout the state of Texas, all the refineries, et cetera, are challenging their property evaluations. And I think, I can't recall why that is. I think there was a Supreme Court ruling or something which permitted it.
Well, what happened was that they actually have not won a case yet. This is interesting. They contend that they were forced to put it on low sulfur, makes low sulfur diesel and some other products that were for pollution control, but they were for pollution control at the tailpipe. Okay, they're contending that they should get the tax credit, not the car company. They should get a tax credit because they had to put in the equipment to make the low sulfur diesel or whatever. So what they've done, and this was started down to Texas City and Pasadena, was Valero was the first one to do it. They challenged it and said, hey, we want that credit. We shouldn't be taxed on that. That should be tax-free because pollution control equipment. Well, it was never intended for them. It was intended, like I said, for the cars. So the school districts and stuff fought them, and guess what? The oil companies kept pouring money into the legal system, pouring money, challenging it, bringing up, asking for more discovery, just basically bled the school districts and stuff to death, and trying to fight the battle in legal costs. And finally, the school district says, "Hey, we'll just pay. Let's agree to something because we can't afford to keep up in the legal."
And obviously, speaking as a person very familiar with civil law, a lot of times the person with the most money is the victor, because you just can't handle all the appeals and the motions, etc.
The golden rule: the person with the gold wins.
Well, unfortunately, let's talk about something more lighthearted. Sure. That I had put a post on. We've seen these scooters that have come all over town, and I think it's an interesting issue for several reasons. I think before City Council, the complaints were they weren't safe because they went up to from 15 to 18 miles an hour, as fast as that, number one. And however, saying that, it kind of reminded me of the Uber and Lyft, which they tried to get rid of, apparently because they wanted to get rid of Uber and Lyft because of the taxi cab, lobbies, and because of RTA, I had assumed. So they were against Uber and Lyft, and then I was proud of the state legislator to come in and kind of overrule everybody and say, look, we're going to regulate it through the state. So I think the taxpayers or the citizens benefited a great deal by having Uber or Lyft. These scooters, I understand, are put out by a private company. They're on a GPS. You swipe a credit card, and then you can take these scooters wherever you want. But the city council had discussed whether or not there is a safety issue, number one, because of the speed. And as an aside, I was told that they don't probably go that fast, number one. And then number two, there's a lot of issues. I told my secretaries today, I said, look, they are kind of using city property to land these scooters, to sit them there. I mean, and you're running a business and you're allowing, and you're just landing these scooters wherever you want.
If I went out and put up a bunch of little things on the sidewalk that sold flowers,
right?
It's the same thing,
right? So they are using. So whether or not they're being taxed or I don't know that they're being taxed. I think it's a good resource for the city. Now, whether or not there's the other issue. How people walk around with their cell phones, or there's a safety issue if they do go that fast, or if somebody gets hurt on a scooter, who's going to pay for it? Is there an insurance? It would seem like there should be some sort of mandatory insurance or a small tax on them for the city. Have you looked into that?
No,
scooter issue is kind of interesting.
No, I haven't, but I thought about it. It's because I've seen it's been a controversy. I would say, first of all, the scooter companies should be required to carry liability insurance for the rider as well as anybody that they hit or something, because they're the ones that are getting the benefit. So it's their job to provide that oversight of liability coverage. Second of all, they should not block any ADA space. I've seen that as being a problem. There's a couple of people that complain because they couldn't get around through the
That would make sense.
ADA car
Right.
cuts because of scooters were in the way. And I do think that
You could easily trip over one.
yes.
I mean, if they were laying down in particular.
And I think they ought to pay for the privilege of using the city sidewalks as a storage area. I mean, if you or I set up business on a corner, they want us to pay.
And I understand there's onerous regulations if you want to have a food cart,
yes,
regarding taxation,
yes,
and where you could park and so
right,
on and so on. Which I don't know that's good. I think whatever it is, vendors, carts along the ocean would be very good,
but safe. Easy possible, but safe for the public.
Yes, and then another kind of a lighter aside to what we were talking about earlier about the termite infestation at Veteran Memorial High School.
That's interesting. That came up at a breakfast conversation I was at yesterday. That actually connects to this earlier conversation we had about elections. The people who have always consistently supported Raymond Gnack doing the architecture and Fulton Construction doing the construction, John Longoria and some of these other people also were tied to the Susie Luna Saldana. And it's my understanding that some people are going to file election complaints against them, that school board race, because of Don Clark and John Longoria and the association that supported the bond all paid her, and she did not disclose
supported the bond to build the Veterans
School. Yeah, it's interesting.
Memorial High School.
No, to build the new Carroll High School.
The new Carroll High School.
And one of the problems is they want to put the new Carroll High School not on the same location. They want to build it out by Cabinets Field, which is way out from where it is. And the reason it's obvious. The reason is they're still trying to promote buildings, houses in around the Oso, which is a very, very bad idea from a floodplain standpoint.
So maybe I was a little bit confused. I was talking about the Veterans Memorial High School and the problem with the termite infestation.
Let me come back to that.
You were talking about, then you talked about the new Carroll High School.
The reason I mentioned that was Fulton Construction and built it. So the built Memorial High School. And I mean, it's obvious down here that this part of the country, you have to check for termites and do certain things.
My understanding that's building codes. There's like a code.
Yes,
there's like gosh, now I forgot. Would you like a barrier or a termite barrier, et cetera, that should be built, number one. And that I didn't look into the municipal ordinances to see if that's a requirement. It would seem like it would be for new construction, number one. And then number two, I guess there's supposed to be some sort of a termite prevention as the building is actually being built. I don't know if that would be a chemical, et cetera.
But, on top of adding insult to injury, that school was built by Fulton for $75 million over what they bid it for.
And that was probably through a bond package, I would assume.
Yeah. Almost every contract that Fulton has ever gotten, going back to the American Bank Center, they've had cost overruns and extra expenses with.
Well, since we're talking, since we brought that up, what do you think of?
They also built the RTA building.
I unfortunately, because of my location, I'm very much affected by Christus Sponge, the expansion of Christus Sponge Shoreline or this RTA building. And I have minor rental space here, but anybody that's in private business and has rental is affected by the building of new rental
Yeah.
space. So many of us that was something else. We were very disappointed by the building of that large RTA.
It was very overbuilt. It was very expensive. It was tremendous. I want to say it was like $275 a square foot to build the thing.
And you're asserting that new commercial construction like that should be how much a square foot? Do you know?
Oh, probably commercial construction at the most. Really fancy stuff would be 150. So
okay, let me change subjects again. Since we're talking about the elections and the runoffs, what do you think about the election results? What do you think about the fact that Mayor McComb couldn't get 50 plus %? Is that because there were just so many candidates?
Yeah,
That's what I think.
I think it was so many candidates because Michael Hall didn't have that many votes. He just barely edged out the other candidates.
And I'm wondering whether or not I don't know that I'm in favor of the policy provisions for a runoff at the 50%. If the main candidate doesn't get 50% or over, well, if there's 20 candidates, he's not. Then the city has to pay for 2 or 3 elections or whatnot, rather 2 elections. I don't know and I don't know if that's a state law or that's a city thing.
Well, it'd be interesting to go to what do they call it? Maine, I think, uses where you pick your first, second, and third choice. So if somebody doesn't have 50%, then they take all the person who had a choice as number 2 and add them to the number 1 if they didn't pick the number 2.
And where is this done at?
I think it's done in the state of Maine. They did that for governor. They do it for all of them.
Well, that would make more sense instead of having these runoffs.
Yes.
Because they're very expensive for the city and they cause a certain amount of, I think, confusion.
Yes.
For like me,
voter turnout, just terrible.
Well, yeah, because who's going to want to go and vote for 2 or 3 candidates?
Well, yes, 2 candidates vote for 2. Go set December 18th, the week before Christmas.
Mm-hmm. I will because I'm at the courthouse often, so it's easy for me to vote.
Yeah.
But in terms of the average citizen has to go on that's very difficult for them.
Yes. And plus, there's limited places to vote. There are reduced places to vote.
What do you think? So, what do you think of the from what you could tell so far of let's assume just for the sake of discussion that Mayor McComb wins again. What do you think of the constituency of city council? Is it good? Is it bad?
I don't think it's particularly strong. The days when we had, people like the 2 Mikes on there, or even Chad McGill and some of his crew, this city council is much weaker as far as they seem to be. It's partially Mayor McComb's fault. They seem to be somewhat directionless as far as city policies. We should be very much doing something about flooding and management of our growth so that we're not building in new flood areas, which we are doing, which is going to cost taxpayers tremendous amounts of money. We're putting infrastructure in harm's way on the island and on the south side. Building new infrastructure will have to be replaced if we have a major hurricane. These are not, this goes back to the Plan CC 2035, that was so watered down by the developers to be what they wanted instead of what the public wanted. If you'd have went to that first meeting, Mark, and heard what people wanted, they wanted an urban city, they wanted a vibrant city, they wanted revitalization, they wanted better roads, they wanted, the developers came in and killed all that. The final version says, "Oh, we had to annex more property." Well, the first people's opinion was exactly opposite of that, and it ended up being a developer document. So this is something we have basically several power groups. We have one that's been backed by American Bank Center and those who do business with it for a long time, or American Bank.
Bank. Yes, a friend of mine is always complaining about the
full construction, Gnac, architecture. We have then we have a certain group of home builders that usually get their financing there that are all back for, they want to keep expanding the city no matter what it does to taxpayers and ratepayers, because the more we spread out, our increases our costs. We don't gain tax wise by adding areas that are out and away from the main city, because there's too much in between we pay for that nobody's on, the infrastructure.
Yes, there's objective studies that indicate that categorically that is one of the number one cause of bankrupting cities, the ever expansion further and further out, and the stretch, of course, and then it has to be covered by police, it has to be covered by fire, it has to be covered fire departments, etc. That is the number one cause. You get a short-term influx of money from taxpayer base, but in the long run, it's the ruination of the city. And Corpus Christi, for a city of its size, I'd be curious if there's many cities with a population of approximately 300,000, much bigger. I would assume there's not.
Well, geographically, we're almost as big as Chicago, 5 million people.
Okay, and
but we only got 300,000.
No, so you're saying that but isn't the fact that it's interesting about this lack of vision. Obviously, that is impliedly supported by a lack of vision, is impliedly supported by such media as the Corpus Christi Caller Times.
Well, sure, and also the political system. And we got to let me talk about Ben Molina, for example, as a perfect example.
Who is Ben Molina?
Ben Molina is a councilman from District 2, is a the only completely urban district in the city. And who does he take money from?
Who does he take money from?
Reagan Brown, Bart Brazelton, Moshe Magoski, who is an Iranian developer, and a bunch of other people.
But he doesn't take money from them.
No,
those are his campaign contributions.
Yes, campaign contributions.
Okay.
And every contractor that does business with the city, 95% of his donations are from people outside the district or special interest groups. Now, follow the money, the citizens aren't getting represented, but Ben has not taken one step policy-wise to do anything about revitalization in his district. I went to him with a proposal a year ago, and he said he would consider it. When I saw him this fall and asked him about it, he said, well, I'll have to look at my notes. Right. But these people that contribute to him are against revitalization in the city because they don't want that. They want it to continue to deteriorate, and they want to sell houses out on the outskirts. They have one business model, and that's it. And they're supporting.
All right, let's talk about the revitalization that some of us have seen. They put these bike paths up. Make sure you don't get out of the video here.
Yeah.
They put these bike paths up. They put these parks along Shoreline Drive. They have allowed, I think, unconscionable building along Christus Spine Shoreline in the center of town, including Christus Spine Shoreline Hospital, numerous banks, etc., that are blocking the view, the aesthetics of the city. Obviously, we've had a number of nonprofits on the bayfront that do not pay any taxes. So that isn't that revitalization? What do you think of these bicycle air pumps and tools? Isn't that for revitalization of sorts? Isn't the RTA building a revitalization of sorts? What is it?
Let me explain to you. We have a housing shortage, a real housing problem in this town. Let me explain to you what revitalization would help this town tremendously, because we increase the tax value over the available infrastructure that's already in the ground. We have just invested a ton of money in like Castoras, Staples, new roads in town. We put all new infrastructure under those roads, which was the thing that would really help attract new business. But we haven't changed the zoning. For example, Staples, you drive down Staples from City Hall to 6 Points. that is an area that is got tons of commercial property that is run down, vacant, underutilized, and the way to change that with no cost to the city would be to change the zoning to mixed zoning, where people could put in plexes, apartment complexes, things like that, up and down there, in with the like neighborhood commercial. That's a urban thing. That's the way a lot of cities do it, and they have vibrant neighborhoods mixed with shops and small businesses and apartment buildings. But we're not going to do that, because that would compete with building subdivisions outside of town. And so that's a way to revitalize it.
Well, what about all these urban, the Cosmopolitan and a few of the other buildings?
It's great if you got lots of money.
Why do you say that?
Because they're expensive. The other kind of buildings we need apartment buildings for regular working people.
Is the Cosmopolitan, et cetera, do you know the occupancy rates of some of these new downtown developments?
I think it's fairly high.
Is it?
Yes.
Interesting.
A friend of mine just moved in there, but it's fairly expensive.
Have you visited him in the Cosmopolitan?
I'm going to. I went and looked at it last year when he went and looked at it. Rudy Garza, for example, is moving downtown from District 5. He's that's one of the reasons he ran at large. There are people who are moving downtown. There's a number of new buildings downtown, hospitals, rehab hospital, and that's all because we rebuilt the infrastructure down there, and the zoning was right for what they wanted to do. But we can expand that. We basically, Mark, we've set the table when we rebuilt the streets. We put the food on it when we put the infrastructure under the ground. Now let's sit down and eat and take advantage of it and increase the tax base along those streets. We could double or triple or quadruple the taxes were collected, for example, along Staple Street.
And Staple Street, as you get towards downtown, is full of dilapidated, abandoned, just terrible.
That's what
it wasn't
saying.
Like that when I moved into the city of Corpus Christi approximately 32 years ago. It was not like that. As a matter of fact, commercial property along those streets would have been very, very expensive.
And the second thing we got to do for revitalization is we have to deal with the homeless problem. We got to quit ignoring it, quit leaving it up to the providers. The providers like it just the way it is. They've got a growing population. They get more and more money. This is a homeless destination.
Who are the providers?
Well, Good Sam, which is, a flop house of the workforce.
Oh,
well, it is.
Okay, you go ahead and list the providers. Reserve. Go ahead. You mean like Mother Teresa's, Loaves and Fishes, Good Sam's, all those are providers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that basically you're asserting the argument that many of these organizations actually make money off of the homeless or benefit somehow financially, or enable their workers to keep working.
Let me say Good Sam's in a different category, okay, because they're a private company.
Yes.
But the other ones basically, look, your job depends on you having people to serve, right?
Clients for me, and my client base,
and their client
base. I must say that many of us in criminal law are not in favor of all this criminalization. So we're of drugs. So you're right, but if we were smart, I guess we'd say, hey, keep drugs illegal. But most of us don't. But you're right. You're right.
But their client base is homeless people. So the more people they have to provide for, the more appeal they can make for extra money.
Well,
and their job is secure.
Right. Well, it's a little bit of a cynical argument, though. I think that many of those people,
I think they're good-hearted. I think they believe in what they're doing.
Right.
But
I think that for example, some years ago, we had the two nuns, the two sisters on that started Mother Teresa's. Very seem like honest.
Right.
Obviously, our nuns, the Catholic nuns, never. They don't have. I read a recent scandal, but generally they have been scandal-proof,
Right.
as opposed to the priests.
But why doesn't the city and the county and the public health district and behavioral health center go together? We proposed this a couple years ago. Go out and locate a facility. Had a location out by Charlie's, right next to Charlie's, that they would say, okay, this is a facility. This is where you go to get services. This is where we have the shelter. It would try to guide people into substance abuse recovery. Would try to get them mental health services. Have one location that they have a cooperative agreement to work with the public sector and get the people out of downtown. Because that's never going to grow as long as they have those people downtown. And you know what else? Guess who's one of the biggest donators to Metro Ministries? Brazelton Homes, because they don't want that area redeveloped. They want those people right where they're at.
Are you asserting that that's where they should live also? That we should provide a living space for them in some sort of warehouse facility?
You know, it's really interesting. I talked to a minister who was here as on the homeless coalition who worked in San Antonio and worked with that facility they have up there. And he worked in Travis Park, which was a spot for a lot of homeless for a lot of years. And I know this from my work in many years in substance abuse and mental health, that the folks that are sick and homeless and don't have resources, the way to not help them is to leave them on the street. To have a facility where they have to go for services and where they're offered and encouraged to get help is the only solution to that problem. And those people that aren't willing to do that will say, hey, you're subject to whatever the criminal justice system.
Well, I think there was actually a decision. I don't recall the Supreme Court decision. It may have been a federal circuit that said, if you provide housing for these people, if they have adequate housing to go to, then you can criminalize being homeless. You can actually criminalize them. But if you do not, then you cannot criminalize it. So in other words, I guess I would almost be in favor of warehousing the homeless with the idea that if they do not go into that homeless, you could criminalize their appearance in certain areas. That way,
yes.
It is a tragedy for downtown. It's been a very big tragedy for my local area here,
yes,
as well. Lately, we've had more vandalism, thefts, and homeless.
We're not helping the homeless either.
I know, and it's a complicated discussion. And I would say that, you know, I do think about maybe 25% has mental health problems, 25% have drug problems and alcohol problems, but there is a certain percentage of them that are probably basically like criminals or cons.
Yes, they are.
And I don't know if it's 5%, I don't know if it's 20%. But we're reaching the end of our show, and we've got to add our beginning and our end. This has been Mr. John Kelley, one of our perennial guests again, always nice enough, who's been talking about the complaints that he filed against Susie Luna, Mr. Rolando Barrera. And
more to come.
More to come. Anybody who wants to respond, whether it's Susie Luna, Rolando Barrera, or any of these construction companies, please come on and talk. Thank you very much.
I'll post the evidence name on CZ Council Watch and Neighborhoods First.
And this show should be on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook Live, and on public access. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.